They expected reactions. I never gave them. They waited for raised voices, shaking hands, rushed explanations. What they got instead was stillness. A steady tone. A pause where anger was supposed to be. They mistook my calm for fear, my restraint for surrender. And I let them. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is allow people to believe the story that makes them careless. I've always been told I'm too calm. Not as a compliment, but as an observation loaded with assumption. Calm, to them, meant unaffected. It meant passive. It meant that whatever pressure they applied wasn't working, or worse, that I didn't notice it. I learned early that people are uncomfortable with composure they can't provoke. It unsettles them. They look for cracks. When they don't find any, they invent meanings. And the meaning they settled on with me was weakness. It didn't happen all at once. It began in small exchanges where my measured responses were met with subtle dominance. Interruptions. Dismissive smiles. Decisions made on my behalf, followed by explanations I hadn't asked for. They spoke a little louder, leaned in a little closer, tested boundaries they assumed were soft. Each time, I responded the same way. Calmly. Directly. Without heat. And each time, they seemed more convinced that they were in control. What they never understood was that my calm wasn't absence. It was discipline. It was a choice made long before them, built from years of learning what emotional reactions cost me. I had learned that volatility hands power to the loudest person in the room. I had learned that reacting feels like strength in the moment, but often becomes leverage later. So, I practiced something else. I practiced staying still while other people revealed themselves. They talked over me more freely as time passed. They made assumptions out loud, confident I wouldn't challenge them. They took liberties, assuming I would adapt. And I did adapt, just not in the way they thought. I listened more. I remembered details they forgot they'd shared. I noticed patterns in how they treated people who pushed back versus people who didn't. I noticed how quickly their confidence turned sloppy when unopposed. There's a strange thing that happens when people believe you're harmless. They stop hiding. They say things they'd normally soften. They make moves without checking the ground beneath them. They underestimate timing. And they assume you'll always be where they left you, quietly accommodating, quietly absorbing. That assumption became their blind spot. Inside, there was tension. Not fear, but control. Every instinct tells you to correct people when they misjudge you. To assert yourself. To prove them wrong in real time. But I had learned that correction teaches people how to handle you. Silence lets them teach themselves. So, I didn't interrupt their narrative. I let it play out fully. I let them build confidence on a foundation they didn't realize was unstable. The pivotal moment didn't arrive with a confrontation. It arrived with a decision. A choice I made quietly, without announcement. I stopped compensating. I stopped smoothing over consequences. I stopped being the invisible stabilizer while they pushed limits. I remained calm, but my calm changed texture. It was no longer accommodating. It was precise. They noticed the effects before they noticed the cause. Things didn't resolve the way they used to. Assumptions met resistance, not through argument, but through absence. Opportunities they expected to control slipped past them. The tone of their communication shifted, confused by a lack of response they couldn't provoke or intimidate. When they finally tried to assert authority directly, expecting compliance, that's when the reversal became visible. I said no, calmly. Without justification. Without edge. Just no. It landed harder than any outburst ever could have. There was nothing to argue with. Nothing to escalate. Their power relied on reaction, and I wasn't giving them one. That was the moment they realized calm wasn't weakness. It was containment. It was patience. It was choice. And by then, it was too late to adjust their strategy. They had already exposed their assumptions, their dependencies, their need for dominance. I didn't need to correct them. Their own confusion did that for me. Afterward, some tried to reframe the past, pretending they'd always respected me. Others pulled back, uncomfortable with a version of me they couldn't read. I didn't chase clarity. I didn't explain the shift. Calm doesn't announce itself. It just stands. What stayed with me wasn't satisfaction. It was clarity. I saw how often strength is misidentified by volume, urgency, and emotional display. How easily patience is mistaken for submission by people who equate control with force. And how dangerous it can be to underestimate someone who has learned how to regulate themselves completely. If you've ever been underestimated because you didn't react the way people expected, consider this. Calm isn't the absence of power. Sometimes it's the storage of it. And when it finally moves, it doesn't need noise to be felt.